I was getting so much into the music of this lovely, great launch by Atelier Wen today. If you don't know who I am Pietro from the limited edition. This is supposed to be one of the best, if not, people say the best broadcast about independent artisan watchmaking. What we do at the limited edition, we represent the most obscure, alternative, and daring independent watchmakers around the globe. And when I say around the globe, I actually literally mean that. Watchmaking is far more than just Swiss watchmaking, far more than just European watchmaking. It expands now all over the world, wherever there is an artisan that wants to give his own interpretation of time by using the human crafts that we are all so passionate about. If you, like me, have a watch collection and are actually obsessed with this hobby of collecting timepieces. So today is no exception. I actually have a friend with me today to interview Robin, a Frenchman that I met a few years ago when I had the privilege of discovering his new brand and his new take on watchmaking through a common friend uh, of the name of Justin. Is it not right, Robin? Nice to see you, first of
Yes,
all.
nice to see you again. Thank you so much for having me here today. Yeah.
This was just 3 years ago, probably, that we met. Robin, this is not your first interview with us. We did one live where I am today in London in Mayfair. And you were just launching your very ambitious project with Atelier Wen. Atelier Wen is all about discovering the human crafts from a different part of the world, specifically China, in your case, because you have a strong background with you and your partner Wilfred from spending a lot of time in China and kind of giving the audience of watch lovers a different take on how things can be done in a different part of the world in watchmaking. So very much 3 years down the line, it feels like it's been ages from that day, especially today that you're launching yet the most daring watch you've ever created.
No, thank you so much for the introduction. I think it's a very good summary of things that we're trying to do. And today is, I mean, yesterday it was, or today at midnight, it's also like a very big and special moment because this is another one in where we release something that is pretty different from what we've done so far. That is pretty different from what's around there. That is maybe slightly shocking as well. So yeah, quite a big, exciting and tiring day, but super happy to be here talking with you and doing one of those interviews again.
We have seen the inflection in the video just before we started this episode. We're going to talk extensively about that. Can you tell me first, in the genesis, in what you're creating with Atelier Wen, you gave a perception, and I'm using this word quite, how can I say, meaningfully. You gave a perception that watchmaking didn't have to be about, big budgets and unattainable. You created some incredibly valuable timepieces manufactured in China, but according to quality standards that are second to none. You went into a level of details that was unparalleled in some ways. I'm thinking about the way you projected and you manufactured your bracelets, for example, your integrated bracelets, the cases. You have multiple time as well upgraded to new quality standards, but still with the idea of offering attainable watchmaking as a starting point. So that was the starting point. How is the brand now developing?
Yeah, so I mean, I think value is always in the core of what we and what I try to do with Atelier Wen. Now the assumptions that we made or the observation that we made is that you can provide value at very different levels and therefore very different price points. When we started the brand, that was in 2018, so we didn't know each other yet. Back then, it was like a very, very, very small, very tiny operation. We actually started with a Kickstarter. And the watches we sold on Kickstarter, they were $490. Back then, for us, it was a huge bet. We were students. There was no any like automatic stainless steel Chinese watch above, say, like $300. It was really a big bet. But at this price, like that we thought was very expensive, we really tried to provide a lot of value. And I think we provided value. We had those wonderful porcelain dials with very artistic Tsinghua kind of color scheme. And then we moved on into perception, and perception again for us was a huge price gap, but we still focused on providing value. The value though was different. The value you provide at like $500, and that when perception started, it was just $2,000. Is very different because you have more budget, you can do more stuff. So we focused heavily on Guilloche. We were amongst the first like accessible brands to like reintroduce the craft. Because you mostly found it on like much higher end, much more expensive pieces, and we provided value through that through the bracelets that you mentioned earlier. This year we released Ancestra, which is a dressy piece. It's also more expensive than Perception. The price was $58.50. It was about 2x the price of Perception, and again we focused on providing value, but the value changed. Now we're releasing Inflection, and to us is the same. I mean, sure, it's a way more expensive watch. I will not deny that, but the focus has still remained on value, and I do think that it is a watch that provides great value.
So here we see the
perception. The very first perception, actually. Yeah. Those were the V1 perception, so you can see the links are not yet chamfered. I mean, besides the external edges, of course, there's a number of things that then we changed when we moved to V2, V2.5 for the titanium mood that we delivered a few months ago. But just to go back to Inflection, yeah, the focus is still on providing value. I think like value, we achieve it through a number of things. First one is the entire tantalum construction that no one has done on a production basis. It's tantalum case, tantalum bracelet.
So
I know, yeah.
No, can we repeat that? Because it's obviously a big statement and a big reality. You have been teasing about the use of tantalum for a while. There was a special edition that came out with Revolution. And why is tantalum first so valuable and secondly so difficult to work with?
So I think the value is intricately linked to the difficulty of working with the metal.
Course.
Tantalum itself as a metal is not that expensive. I mean, it's not a cheap metal, but it's not that expensive. It's nowhere near the price of gold, nowhere near the price of tantalum. So the value is not like tied to the price of like the raw commodity. The value is tied to the difficulty of working with it, because tantalum is a metal that gets very sticky when you try to machine it, and as such it will damage the tools that you're using to machine the metal, to shape it, to craft the various parts. And those tools that will get damaged, they will need to be replaced, and actually they will get damaged very frequently, so they will need to get replaced frequently. It's a metal that needs a lot of machining time, especially if you want to polish. So you use the tools more, you break them more, you replace them more, and this is where the sort of like cost of tantalum lies. It's really in the machining, and this difficulty in machining.
As per your experience, then, would that be the reason why basically no other manufacturer have that, working with tantalum on the back of course, collectors talking about tantalum quite fondly?
Yeah, no, I mean, to me, that's the prime reason why you don't have tantalum bracelet watches at all. I mean, you have some watches that use tantalum and other metals. You had the AP, the champions from the 90s, there were tantalum and rose gold, tantalum and white gold. They were very limited, and I've talked to people at AP who told me it was actually a nightmare to make. You had a bunch of like piece unique. You had the Journe piece unique, the Louis Vuitton piece unique with the tantalum bracelet, but those are like very, very rare and few. And the reason behind this is that the thing is intricately complex to machine, to manufacture. It's also extremely expensive, and as such there is like capacity issues, capacity constraints. Because it's just really hard to be done, and therefore it doesn't exist.
when you work on a unique piece, you're factoring in the cost that you're not going to use the tools again. You're not going to use
Yeah.
that particular machine anymore, and you built it on the price of the unique piece. And so I should have been more precise and said that yours is the first attempt to produce tantalum at scale. At scale that is still very limited, but we're talking about 100 pieces, not to start with.
Yeah, no, we were talking about 100 pieces per year. It's a big evolution from like say what was available before. It's still not a huge numbers. In all honesty, we cannot produce an infinity of those watches. It's still very complex. But by being able to have a different process from say like all those pieces that are just made on like a one-off basis, we were obviously able to reduce some costs. Reducing those costs allow us to also be competitive with tantalum, because I know this is an expensive watch, but in the world of tantalum, it's quite a competitive one. But still, there are things that cannot be compressed, like the polishing, for instance. This is extremely machine intensive, and again, it's the same issues as I described before. You damage your tooling, you replace the tooling, and you do that like quite frequently. You can notice the bracelet has like a very organic, very rounded shape. You have concave chamfers on the side, convex central links that are all polished. This is actually really a nightmare to polish, and this is like one of the big reasons why the cost then like are just spiking on this watch.
We're gonna go into more details. What could we just to end on the tantalum? Why would you say? So would you say people are attracted to tantalum just because of how rare it is, or as I believe as well, because I tried one of your tantalum pieces on my wrist, it actually looks and feels different to your regular stainless steel or titanium, for example, on your wrist. What's your take on that?
So I think honestly, there's three reasons why people are attracted to tantalum. Number one is the density, so the weight that you have on the wrist. I think there are people who are into heavy watches, and it's the same reason why some people may want to buy a white gold watch or a platinum watch. You know, from a look perspective, it doesn't look that different from a steel one, but then on the wrist, you can feel that very high density. You can feel that presence, and some people, including myself, particularly myself, they really love that. Second reason why I believe people can be into tantalum is the color. So tantalum has a kind of like gray blue sheen that comes off naturally. It's fairly unique. I don't really know of any other wearable metals that also have that blue sheen. For sure, you have other metals that have blue sheens, but you cannot wear them. You know, you cannot wear cobalt, or you cannot wear osmium straight on your wrist. So that's pretty cool. This gray blue sheen is very dynamic. When you put it in the sun, it's fairly vivid. When it's dusk, it gets like slightly purplish. Honestly, I think it's very pretty. And I do think that, so some other people are also attracted to tantalum due to the sheen. And the last reason is the one we were talking about, is the difficulty. You know, this kind of bragging right of knowing that this is one of the hardest metals to work with, and as a result, one of the least common metals in watchmaking, simply due to the technological and manufacturing burden of creating those parts. And some people, they love that. They love knowing that, this thing is very rare. Very few can do it. There's very few that are made as a result.
Very high melting point because of the density as well, and of course very resistant to any sort of corrosion or acidities, etc., etc. So it kind of ends up giving a very comfortable presence on the wrist. So it was definitely worth it for you to experiment. But I know that this is not the first time you've worked with tantalum. There was a limited edition that was launched, correct me if I'm wrong, last year with Revolution, the famous magazine, which was also tantalum, but it was based on your previous design of the Perception, correct?
Yes, exactly. So, I can give you a bit the story of that watch, because it's a watch that happened very organically. Wilfried and I, we started being interested in tantalum in 2022. You know, like we had just launched Perception, and we were thinking about like how could we create some kind of flagship watch. For us, the model in terms of like collection structuring has always been Ming. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Ming from a watch perspective, from a business perspective as well. And I think that the way they did their collections is like really smart. You have accessible pieces, and also you have like really high-end pieces that do elevate the standard of the brand. So with Wilfried, my partner, we were thinking about, okay, how could we create such a flagship piece? And we tried to break it down into different elements, the materials we use, the craft we explore, the movements we use, and whatnot. And tantalum like quickly came in the discussion. And what was kind of cool to us is that no one was making tantalum bracelet because people were saying it's too hard. And so we thought, okay, if we can do that, then we'll really have something quite exceptional, like on the material front of things. So we started developing tantalum. It was very complex. We had to go through a lot of suppliers in China. Most of them couldn't do it, but still, the process would slowly progress and whatnot. And then for Watches and Wonders 2024, finally, we were able to make samples in tantalum of the bracelet, because the bracelet was really the interesting part. Like the case, there's quite a few that do it. There's Journe, there's Moser, there's MBNF, but the bracelet really is the one that no one does. So Watches and Wonders 2024, we make like 2 samples of perception with a purple dial, all in tantalum. And during Watches and Wonders, so I meet with Wei. We had done other projects with Revolution before. He really, really likes the watch, and he's getting married, I think, like back then he was getting married pretty soon. And I thought, you know what, like it could be quite fun to make him like a wedding watch. That would be tantalum, because he seems to love it, but also the red color of the first watch we did together, and the pattern of what I felt was the most beautiful watch we did together. So I pitched him the idea. He loves it, and then he's like, oh, but you know what? Maybe we could actually make that watch as like a small run. For you guys, it can be a trial, and for us, it can also be something quite meaningful. So that's how this watch came to be. We made 25 of those, and they were released summer 2024. They were delivered early 2025. I think we delivered them in January 2025, and that was effectively the first time you had a series of like full tantalum bracelet watches. That's the story of the piece.
Absolutely. And that also gave hope to all of those that were interested in tantalum to be able to acquire at one point one of your pieces in tantalum. And they started to wait on this new release, which is the Inflection. However, of course, at that time, you managed to price the Revolution edition at $10,000 at the time. Whereas now with the Inflection, you are more or less $30,000. What has changed? Is it the design? Is it the amount of tantalum? Or is it the other elements that we're going to talk about in a second? The movement itself and the dial. What is the main difference for those that are wondering, and after seeing the Revolution watch, that we're hoping to be able to acquire a tantalum piece at more or less the same price point? What did it make it possible at this point?
No, that's the tough question. That's the question I was expecting, and it's I think it's pretty normal for people to wonder. Like with Revolution, it was $10,000, and the watch we released yesterday was $30,000. How come it's 3x the price? So there's a number of reasons. I would say some reasons are done to our supplier, and some reasons are done to the watch itself. If we look first of all at the supplier side, so when our supplier made the 25 pieces Hong for Revolution, they had never done any production, any series in tantalum. They had done prototypes for us, but they have never made a bracelet in more than like 2 or 3 pieces. And so basically, they had no experience with it. They didn't really know how to price it. They priced it based on what they thought it would cost to make. We paid that price, and then we priced the watch based on the cost that they quoted us, and all was fine, right? And then like when they delivered us the 25 pieces, they came back to us and they were like, listen, we underestimated how hard this thing is. We underestimated how much material we had to scrap, how much like tooling we had to throw away and scrap. And as such, we lost money on this. We completely underpriced the manufacturing of this watch, so we will have to raise the prices. Basically, that's
so
that's
they were learning and testing with you, literally.
Because no one had made like a production of tantalum bracelets ever. What you had is the piece unique jaune that sold for 2.5 million, by the way. The piece unique Louis Vuitton that was on the wrist of Jean, and apparently there was like a piece unique AP for the King of Spain, which is what like started the whole like tantalum watchmaking. That's it. No one had the experience of like making an entire like production of full tantalum bracelets. So they also didn't know. They priced it based on the prototyping. The prototypes were, I mean, it's different prototyping a piece, making a series of it. So yeah, they learn as they did that first series.
Of course, and your obsession with wanting to offer value was as such that you would have done it if you could have, no? Still kept everything on a very exceptional, attainable price point.
Yeah, I mean that's I mean value is always the focus. In all fairness, on this Inflection watch, the margin, the percentage component is less than on perception. We really try to price it like as competitively.
That's your margin. Your margin, you're saying, yeah.
Yeah, it's in percentage points. It's less than perception.
Yeah.
It's less than Ancestra. It's the watch on which we make the least margin. We got the cost from the supplier, and then we just had a look at what is sort of like the minimum we can charge for this. If the supplier had quoted us the same as what they quoted us when we did it with Revolution, then of course we would have priced the watch at a lower price point. So I don't want people to have the feeling that we're like, oh, okay, some stuff did well, and therefore we're trying to cash.
Yeah, and I really appreciate.
If anything, that's the opposite.
Yeah, I really appreciate your straight answers, and I actually invite. If you are watching this live, because I know most of you watch this content recorded, but if you're watching live, feel free to pop your questions here, and we will try to answer you at the end of the episode. You were saying the first reason was suppliers quoting you.
The supplier. The second is also the watch is pretty different. So there's a number of differences. So first of all, obviously on the side of tantalum, you can see it's a very different design. It's a very rounded, it's a very organic design. There's very few flat surfaces. There is a lot of polishing. Polishing is really what's the hardest with tantalum. And here we really try to go full on it. You can see all the mid links are polished. On the side of the bracelet, you have concave chamfers, which are a nightmare to make. So the level of execution, thank you so much, Justin. The level of execution with tantalum is quite higher there. So that's definitely quite a bit like costlier. We didn't do that just to show that we could. We did that because we realized that when the surface is not flat, you tend to have like a fair amount of like micro reflections, and this is what will really bring out the blueness of tantalum. So we wanted to have a design that would really sort of like play out the maximum potential of the metal, and this is why like there's very few flat surfaces to really bring out the blue sheen. But the other reasons are not just...
Sorry, Robin. Just to insist on that, obviously, when you work on a completely new design, is a totally new project on which you are committing on costs that are totally new, and you cancel all the economies of scale that you could have had on the previous design of the perception, to which the Revolution tantalum model was part, as well.
Yeah. I mean, no, it's you start from scratch. I mean, unfortunately, like when you manufacture anything in China, if you change even like the slightest dimensions, you need to like create new molding, new tooling. So those watches have absolutely nothing in common. Like it was like a full brand new project. The only point in common they have is that they are made by the same company, like the same supplier, and they are both made of tantalum. But that's it. So yeah, quite a different watch design-wise, a sort of like more difficult design to execute, a lot more polishing, which is costlier. So that added up quite a bit. I mean, if you compare with Perception, you can see Perception is very, very brushed. It's very flat. It's very angular. There's very little like curved areas. There's much less polishing as well. Only the chamfers are polished. So yeah, you can notice the designs are pretty different. But the two other reasons why, again, this watch is also more expensive. Number one is the movement.
We haven't. Yeah. I was going to introduce gently the other two massive elements that we haven't even discussed yet. One is in keeping with your obviously core DNA, which is about enhancing the ancestral Chinese and Asian crafts, which is something that is fairly unknown in the world of watchmaking. Apart from, of course, some of the ventures of the likes of, I don't know, I'm thinking about Vutiline and using Urushi lacquer, for example, just to give an example. But you found in that being your DNA, you discovered the best guilloche artist in China, and you've now discovered probably the best enameler in China, and you wanted the core of the heart of this watch to talk about this traditional craft related to your roots, because your roots are going deep into Chinese watchmaking.
Yep. No, exactly. So it's a very different dial. It's a different craft. Yes, it's Grand Enamel. We work with the workshop of Kong Lin Jun in Beijing. He's a pretty famous enameler in China. He actually owns his watch brand and jewelry brand. It's called Concise. They mostly do cloisonné, mostly for the Chinese market, but like really, really high-end stuff. In 2021, so he received from the Chinese Chamber of Watchmaking, the CHA, the title of being the best enameler of China for watch dials. So he's pretty recognized, and I think he's pretty able. Those dials that we're looking at, the blue and the black, they look deceptively simple, but they're actually not that simple. Because we really wanted to ensure that we wanted to ensure that, but it was also a need, if you go for like monocolor enamel, like just like a single color, fully opaque, you really need to ensure that you have a surface that will be absolutely free of like blemishes, slightly discolored dots, little cracks, pit holes, and that is actually pretty complex. Like when you go for translucent enamel, it's way more forgiving. You can have like a lot of like small deviations that will not really show, so it's okay. But with like pure single color opaque enamel dials, that actually is quite complex. So they look simple, but they're actually not that simple. They're quite complex to make. From a design standpoint as well, I think it's very interesting because it's very different from us. I would say usually our dials are a bit more maximalist in the aesthetics. There's more going on. So if you have a look at Perception, the guilloche pattern is fairly active, fairly busy, and then you have complex cutouts, indexes, markings. If you look at Ancestra, it's even more the case. You have hammering and then the gradient of enamel, diamonds, Chinese numbers, like really a lot going on. But there we try to exercise restraint and just have, like a single color and the numbers. And the idea behind that is that we wanted to leave more space for the case and the bracelet to talk, because it's such an important point of the watch. So that's why you have dials that are a bit like lighter and simpler in the aesthetics.
So yeah, and you have three executions here. You have the blue Yuan, you have the black Mo, and you have the green Yu. The green is totally different, no? It recalls a little bit, it reminds of the work you've done on the Ancestor in this case.
Yes. No, it's a bit different because this one is the launch edition. So this one is actually like hard capped to a fixed number, and then we will not be reproducing it. So we thought we could maybe do something that is a bit more like outside of the range, but still, like, you know, even in the colors that we chose, like we purposely like stayed with green, and the gradient that you see, it's a fairly, how to say, peaceful green. It's not a very aggressive green. It's not very electric. It's not very saturated.
It's
And
very
that was
natural.
again
It's very
to,
natural, I want
yeah,
to say.
and that was again, you know, to leave more space for the tantalum. This green is also pretty cool because it has some hints of like blueness to it. So under the right angle and the right lighting, you can sort of see a little bit of a blue sheen on the dial, and that echoes as well the blue sheen of the tantalum caves and bracelets. So they do work together pretty well. And the gradient you see is like very soft, very smooth. Whereas Ancestral gradient, on purpose, we made it very aggressive. You know, like if you look at Ancestral, it's like silver at the center and then black at the edges, and in the middle you have all the shades from light blue, turquoise, medium plus blue, dark blue, very dark blue. It's this very, very wide chromatic range. But here on the green Inflection, it's much more narrow, the gradient, and it feels more peaceful, more smooth, more
So,
soothing, more quiet, which we wanted.
so the launch edition, the U in green that we see here, is a 30 pieces limited edition. The price is the same as the rest of the collection, 29,800 US dollars. And the black and the blue, though, will be reproduced in future. Yes.
Yes, that's the plan. That
Okay.
is the plan to keep on making
Okay.
them. We may be introducing new variants in the next year or the next year. We don't really know yet how exactly the collection will evolve, but so far the plan is, yeah, there's only like 30 pieces of the Yo, the green one, and then like black and blue. They are not limited per se. Of course, they fall within the 100 pieces per year envelope, but they will be remade next year and hopefully the year after. I mean, if people, of course, believe in the series, that is.
Yeah, of course, it's 30
Yeah.
pieces each this year, and then next year it should carry on with the black and the blue. And yeah, we have another 10 minutes to talk about we talked about the heart of the watch, which is the dial. We talked about the architecture, which is of course the tantalum case and bracelet. We yet have to talk about the brain. And you, together with maybe Studio Underdog, Robin, so Atelier Wen and Studio Underdog really helped collectors to link the dots on certain events in watchmaking, like the acquisition of Venus manufacture back in the day by the Chinese government, which was pretty much the start of quality mechanical production of movements in China. And all of this can be traced to now the current Seagull watch factory, to which the Dandong factory is linked. And Dandong was famously where you were sourcing your movements for your perception collection. And so it was an interesting story to unveil for us and to explain and to debate about, on where, maybe without lingering too much on the finishing, you could find some quality movement with some kind of a Swiss ancestry that could have been proposed today for what we call value for money kind of watchmaking offer. You have now steered with this collection completely back to working with one of the most important traditional, and actually a brand I'm very close to, because it was my first job in watchmaking, was with Girard-Perregaux. You are collaborating with them to enrich and to equip this brave project with a top-notch Swiss caliber. So I'm going to ask you, why? What's the reason behind this choice? Is it a little bit putting on the side Chinese movement production, or is it just a step? Is it just a chapter to create just a high-end collection that you see driving the perception that you want to give about the brand? Sorry, it's a bit of a long question.
It's a long question.
I hope it's clear.
No, it's very clear. I think the easiest is that maybe I give you a bit of context as to our thinking process and how we ended up working with Girard-Perregaux. So, we launched the the 25 pieces with Revolution, delivered them, got price feedback from the supplier, and then we made computation as to how much the watch would cost, and then we realized that there's just no way people would purchase it. The watch would be something like 23, 24 grand, and then you would have the same movement as what you had in the Perception. I really thought people would be like, hey guys, there's an issue, this movement, it's okay for your accessible range, it's okay up to a certain level, but then we're paying like 8 times more, and like we're getting the same thing, so that's an issue. So then we thought, well, okay, we cannot use the same movement, and looking also at the feedback we get from collectors, from customers, saying they want like movements that are maybe more accurate with more power reserve. We thought, yeah, let's just try to find such a movement. And actually we tried to develop that initially with Speake in China. They were very keen to work on that, so we told them, okay, we want a movement that is very thin, because I really like thin watches. We want quite a bit more of our reserve. We want like a better, more stable accuracy. We want great finishing. And what we realized is that this was actually very, very hard to do. Like they are very good when it comes to developing complications, developing modules. I think today they are like really, really efficient, really strong in that field. And you're seeing the ripples of that, that there's a lot now more affordable watches with very interesting and quirky sort of features and complications. However, doing like a base caliber that is thin, that is very accurate, that has decent power reserve, and that is very stable, this is actually very tough. And I was very puzzled, and I asked them why. I was like, you can do so many things, you're working on your 3D tourbillon that they released like a few weeks ago. How come you can't just make like a simple thin automatic movement that will be very stable and very accurate? And they told me, to them, this is actually the hardest, because this necessitates a lot of like very deep, very sort of like base technical work. It's also linked heavily to the alloys they will use for the barrel, for the escapement. And there are like metal alloys that are available in Switzerland, available in Japan, available in Germany, but that are not yet available in China. They are conducting a lot of research, but they told me that right now they cannot do that. If we wanted to develop like a special feature, they were happy to do it. It's just like a thin automatic movement that would be very accurate, very stable, and with long power reserve. They told me this is actually pretty tough. So then we were like, okay, well, let's look outside of China. And of course, the movement needed to match the standard of the watch. So we wouldn't work with CTA, wouldn't work with Sellita, Soprod, La Joux-Perret, Seiko, Miyota. I mean, you name them, like that wouldn't have been in tune with the rest of the watch. And so in the high-end field of like Swiss movement, there were not that many people left. There was Schwarz-Etienne, but we thought the movements are too thick. There was Chronote, but again, like thickness was an issue. The timelines to get movement was also an issue. There was Cercle des Horlogers, but those are incredibly expensive. And then there was like Vaucher and GP. Vaucher seemed like it was very tough to get the movements, because you need to be approved by the foundation. It's a very long process. We knew no one that could really help us, and GP actually initially we didn't really think about them, but during I Am Watch in Singapore, my co-founder Wilfried, he had a coffee with Max from MBNF, and he actually wanted to ask him for help to be in touch with Vaucher. And then Max was like, oh, but why don't you talk to GP? They actually make one of the greatest automatic slim movements of the past 30 years, one that has been used by a lot of brands like Vacheron, like General Genta, like Daniel Brough, that is available, that is stable. So Max put us in touch with
which
GP.
is Robin. Robin, it's amazing, because when I was working for GP, we were working on the LM2 at the time. On the second piece ever launched by MBNF, who had a GP caliber. I remember distinctly going with Gino Macaluso in the watchmaking atelier and seeing those movements.
No. But I mean, yeah, few people know, but actually, yeah, those automatic MBNF, they use GP as a base, and so Max recommended us. He put us in touch with Patrick. Patrick was quite enthusiastic about the project. I went to meet them in Switzerland, and what really sealed it for me is that the first thing they said was, okay, we can work together, but you need to customize the appearance of the movement. The movement needs to look like it's your movement and not our movement. And I was like, oh, that's really cool, because for us that was the kind of like ultimate thing we could ask. You know, we read about Voce, like how many you need to order to get some stuff customized, and the volumes were huge, the costs were huge. But GP from the get-go, they were like, okay, we'll work together, but this thing we will need to be customized. It will need to have your identity, your DNA, your soul. And we're like, oh, that's really amazing. And so then with our designer, Alfred Chan, who you maybe know from Toledo and Chan, who's in Hong Kong, but also another designer in Switzerland, Sidwan Lescoville. We started working on like redesigning the surface appearance of the 3300 so that it could be ours. And the big mission that we had was like, how can we instill our Chinese cultural DNA inside the movement? And the way we did so is that we decided to be inspired by ancient representations of wind in Chinese art, you know, like very wavy, very flowy. And we sort of like recut the bridges to echo that. We changed the finishing on the bridges to also echo this. You have those very wavy laser cut de Genève. We did the same on the rotor. And eventually that's how we arrived at this result. So it's technically speaking an amazing movement. From a look perspective, I think it's us, you know, you
So
can
once
see
again,
the Chinese cultural DNA. Sorry?
and once again, no economies of scale. You went a long way of customizing completely a movement and starting from scratch. I also have to kind of correct myself. I said LM2 because I'm tired. HM2, of course, was the horological machine number two by MBNF at the time with the GP movement. Sorry, carry on. Yeah, so you developed completely. You just didn't go and outsource an existing movement like we've seen so many times. With the
I mean,
Schwarzetienne or with other calibers. Yeah.
yeah, we still started with the 3300, so it's a
Yeah.
3300 as a base, but yeah, just with
Yeah.
like the top bridges like completely changed. So I mean, it's still a
Yeah.
3300. I don't want
Of
people
course.
thinking
Yeah. It's not a new
to
caliber as
develop our
such.
yeah
It's a
yeah no
customized.
it's the
Yeah.
GP
Yeah.
3300, but yeah,
Yeah.
completely customized, which took some time. You know, it's not an easy job. There was a very deep and long thinking process because it's not easy to find ways to change the movement. You have big technical constraints, but also like, yeah, purely from a creative standpoint, you know, is okay, what are you going to be doing? Like how are you going to turn the Swiss movement into something that can echo your Chinese cultural celebration? So that took some time, and then we worked with GP technical team to really translate that design into something that they could be doing. So there was a lot of back and forth between them, the designers, and eventually we reached this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very interesting. I have a question. I received a question actually in the past few days from some of our collectors that knew about the launch, and they were asking me what was the interest of GP. So why were GP seduced by the idea of creating or customizing their caliber for you? If you could read between the lines in your conversations with Patrick, for example.
Honestly, it's very hard to say. So it may be a disappointing answer, but in a few words, is I don't really know. Honestly,
Yeah.
with you, I was also quite surprised they accepted, because you know GP is one of the oldest manufacturers in Switzerland. It's a very established company that they have super long history, super high, like, you know, like heritage. Whereas we're a startup, we're mostly like internet based, you know, we don't have our own manufacturer. We don't have like a fixed site, and we are all about China, you know, Chinese culture, Chinese craftsmanship. We are very, very different. They are all, they are a very established company, a very Swiss company. a very big one, and we're like very new, very Chinese, very like e-commerce focused. So I was honestly very surprised when they accepted. Maybe they, I don't know, maybe they wanted to try something new. I'm not exactly sure, but the point I think is I'm still like super grateful of them having accepted working with us.
Yeah, I have, which is it is amazing at so many levels. I have a theory in that respect. Is having been an insider at Girard-Perregaux as well for 3 years back in the day before it was acquired. They were acquired by Kering. I believe during the tenure, the Kering tenure, probably they lost a little bit their independent kind of attitude within the industry, because before that they were known for supplying some of the newer daring watchmakers. I have mentioned Max Busser before, but I could have mentioned Bulgari as well. I remember distinctively, making those movements for Bulgari, and Daniel Roth. Daniel Roth back in the days in the 90s. If you go and look at the some of the Daniel Roth production at the second part of the 90s, they were fueled by Girard-Perregaux. So they had a bit of a role, a little bit like maybe La Joux-Perret today. They were kind of really powering some of the interesting independents. So I don't know. My guess is that now that they are independent again, they are rediscovering that kind of side of their business, because their obviously manufacturing capacity being limited is something that needs to work 24/7 to really bring the benefit that GP also needs to make it stand and succeed. So that's just my guess, and I obviously invite GP to let me know if it's a completely different reason or take that needs to be taken here. But yeah, Robin, this was an exceptionally good conversation. Thank you very much. I know it wasn't an easy one, because like anytime an independent watchmaker tries to break boundaries and try to dare how can I say, challenge the status quo and go in uncharted territory, there are challenges. Your challenge is to obviously get the response that you hope at a price point where you were not expected, obviously, and I think the product speaks for itself in so many ways. There is a bit of explaining, and I think that's to be done, but I think that's unfair to you, because watch collectors normally they don't buy based on rational motivations, but with you, they kind of feel this comes into force because I think you have given so much value in the past that by definition people always expect that and they want to see it clearly. So obviously when you are at a much higher price point, it becomes a bit of a more difficult challenge. But there is so much to be told about this piece, and I think now we have brought some clarity. I feel. Is there anything else you wanted to add, and maybe some how can I say, indications on how people can reserve their piece through us, through you? What's happening worldwide?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, if you want me to briefly talk about like how someone can get a piece, so the piece cannot be like purchased straight. The rationale for us was twofold. Was like, well, number one, we don't make a lot of them, so yeah, we wanna make sure they go to people who actually enjoy them, wear them, and whatnot. So on our website, like you need to kind of like fill in a short questionnaire, and then you have a chat with my co-founder or myself in regards to our retailers, because our retailers also carry the pieces. So I mean, you guys too, Pietro. Also, I mean, the process is a bit different, but still the point is that like, yeah, it's not just an add to cart button. Like people should have a chat with the retailer, just ensuring that okay, the interest is legit, and that's a piece that's gonna be one for us as well. The idea of having a conversation with like each owner, we thought that was quite cool. That was a good way to also bring like a more personal touch to the process, because it's really a big piece for us. It's a big risk, but more than that, it's a big moment. So we are very thankful for all the collectors, all the people that will be supporting this project. It's a big leap of faith. I know it's not obvious coming from us. We've never done that. I can understand the shock. I can understand the questions. I can understand the comments. As you said, watch collecting is not a rational hobby. So in our process, we also wanted to ensure that, okay, those people who are brave enough to follow the project, to want to wear the watch, we would also get to know them, to talk to them, and yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. I have had experience of watchmakers that would have received orders just based on the idea they would make a watch without even showing it. So it's far from being rational as a hobby or as a passion. But I think in your case, you are so generous in bringing us inside what it means to run a watch company, to leverage on all technologies available in Asia, in Europe, without having some kind of preconceived boundaries. That is inevitably, it springs very interesting conversations. And I think this one was one that I will treasure. There's a lot in there. I think if you love watchmaking, you can find a lot in what Robin said today that can give you a better context and a better idea of what it means at such a young age as well for Robin, running an international operation such as Atelier Wen. It started very humbly, but now it's obviously building a very strong reputation for itself. So I can only congratulate you, Robin. We are here, of course, for you if you need to know more. I'm in touch with Robin on a daily basis on WhatsApp, and you can have access as well to have conversations with him if you want. Just let me know if you want to discuss about your own order. We have had a few of you that have gone through the books to reserve your own piece. Just speak to us, speak to my team, Peter, Johnny, Sam. We're all available to give you all the details you need. There is also an excellent press release that I received from Robin with all the information, all the technical details. I can forward that to you quite happily if you just send me a WhatsApp. So this went a bit longer to what we normally do, Robin, but I'm very grateful for your time, your energy, your passion, your enthusiasm, and your openness as well. Because with you, I always feel like I can ask anything, and there will be an answer for that. So thank you very much. If you want, we can do this anytime. I have one last question. What's in the pipeline after this big leap? Are you gonna re-explore, for example, mechanical movements in China, in Asia? Do you have a set idea what is gonna happen next or not?
No, we have a pretty clear idea. So I think the way we want to structure the range that we offer is really to have two ends, like an accessible end that is going to be perception and ancestra. So perception and ancestra, they are not going away. We'll have some perception novelties pretty soon, and they will be priced like perception. We're not just inflating prices and say, okay, now it's 10 grand. No. But perception remains perception. We'll have some ancestral novelties actually pretty soon. So we'll have that. On the inflection side of things, we will actually have like a really special, really small LE coming up like really soon. That is quite daring in the design. So I guess you'll see more maybe during Dubai Watch Week, who knows? But also in terms of movements, we're actually still working with some Chinese watchmakers. We have a very, very exciting project with an independent Chinese watchmaker. So I cannot really say yet who he is because I don't want to spoil the surprise. But that is hopefully something that will come at the end of 2026 or early 2027. And that will be definitely in the ambitious side of the scale. That will be a very, very small number of watches. I think we're talking like between 6 and 8 watches per year. But that will be very, very interesting. And this will be a fully handmade Chinese movement by someone who I think is really, really cool.
Yeah. And that's a side that is overlooked sometimes. I mean, we are very close with the AHCI, and we know that Chinese watchmaking now at that level of the master watchmakers is developing really, really seriously. Also on the brand side, there is Hout that is launching with the new biaxial tourbillon. So things are really happening. So for you, you'll be an insider of that movement and a bit of a leader probably of that movement that is coming out. To fight this perception coming from the past that whatever comes from China should be cheap or cheaper. there are many distinctions to that kind of rule that probably is part of the past for the best part. But Robin, thank you so much once again, and I wish you all the best on the launch. One last question. I just saw a comment.
Yeah.
On the green U version, can clients choose their own individual number, or is something that you can't manage?
You mean the serial on the case back, right?
The 1 to 30.
We can try to accommodate requests, but we cannot guarantee 100% that we can accommodate the request, because as you may guess, well, there are numbers that I feel maybe are more desirable to most, and therefore people ask all for those numbers. So we're happy to take requests. It's a small run, so it's easier to manage and say when we make perceptions or when we make ancestors, but we cannot guarantee. So if some like parties are interested in like specific numbers, maybe they can give us their top 3 or top 5 preferences. And then we write that down, and then we just do our best to give like the highest preference possible.
Yeah. So once again, get in touch with us, and I'll twist Robin's arm if I can. Thank you so much, Robin. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you so much,
and
Pietro. Merci.
We'll talk soon again. Please feel free to put your comments here. If you need any more details, we're gonna be happy to send it across to Robin. And thank you for following us. We are amazed by the love we're receiving. We're 220,000 subscribers on this YouTube channel that when it started was supposed to just be a very, very niche conversation between people that love independent watchmaking, and it's become much bigger than what we expected, and that's because of you all and because of the watchmakers like Robin, the brands, the makers that make these passions so lovable and so enjoyable. So thank you, everyone, and I'll see you very soon with another story from the world of independent watchmaking. Bye.
Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.